Hey, ContraWagner, thanks for your questions. I'm going to give a shot at answering them. So your first question was, why do I draw a connection between modernity and the Holocaust? I just want to say before I go into this that when I refer to the Holocaust, I'm kind of using it as a metaphor to represent all the failures of modernity as, the state of work is in newly industrialized and urbanized states, the imperialism of the late 19th century, the irrationalism of mass politics, the degradation of art in mass media, amongst many other things, with the world wars being the pinnacle. But I will answer your question, why do I think that the Holocaust is an essentially modern occurrence that's connected to modernity and the project of enlightenment. I'm just going to give a list of a few of the characteristics of the Holocaust which are essentially modern characteristics. It's not an exhaustive list, and I'm not saying that there weren't characteristics of the Holocaust that were not modernist. So, I mean, first of all, Germany. This happened in Germany, and Germany is the height of the enlightened civilization. Britain, Germany, and France have their own little argument going on between them, but Germany really considered itself to be, and many other people around the world considered it to be, the enlightened civilization. All of its thinkers and all of its art and poetry and everything, it's all like Germany is the pinnacle of the modern enlightened civilization. But more than that, this points to the question of nationalism. Nationalism is a fundamentally modern idea, and, it's taken to real extremes in the Holocaust. And part of that has to do with the adding of science to it. This modern idea that science and rationalism should be applied to all fields. We should just head out there with our rationalism. And so you get something like racism, which, we use that now as a pejorative term, but obviously back then this was not a negative thing. Racism was considered a science. You have eugenics and phrenology, the measuring their heads and all that crap. And these things were considered serious science, and this is like a symptom of the modern phenomenon of this science just applied to things that science has no business in. Science has no business telling us what the worth of a human being is. But that's what racism is, and that's what we saw in the Holocaust, and that's a fundamentally modern idea. I guess one of the main features that's often pointed to is the systematic, the organized, rational nature of the extermination of the Jews. The way the whole thing was done was just so quintessentially modern, just so systematized and efficient, and the Nazis were just the pinnacle of modernity. I'm not saying that if you put all of these modern things together that it creates something as horrible as Nazism. I agree with you that the Enlightenment way of thinking is a really good way of thinking, and it's had lots of positive aspects, but you can't deny that the Nazis were fundamentally modernist, and more so that they were, they embodied these modern ideals to such an extreme extent. Yeah, so I want to emphasize, just because I'm saying that the Nazis were the pinnacle of modernity, I'm not trying to say that any, full extreme manifestation of modern principles is going to necessarily be evil. But I'm saying this one just happened to be. And that is a real symptom of modernity, that there's no... morality isn't a question. It doesn't come into scientific studies, because this is a function of the modern autonomy of the separate spheres of culture. You've got science, morality, and art, essentially. are the three categories, and they're separate, they're autonomous. But yeah, I had a lecturer who referred to this as the parcelization of meaning. I think that what's important about that is saying that this isn't just a question of culture. This isn't just a question of whether artists are conveying moral messages or whether scientists are questioning whether their scientific discoveries are moral. This isn't just a question of culture. It's actually meaning itself has been split up. So something like the Holocaust, which to us is just abhorrent. There's just no other way to look at it for us. Its meaning is essentially evil, and it's just a disgusting thing. But obviously not so for the people who manned and staffed the death camps, because meaning was parcelized for them. The moral question didn't come into it. This was an efficient system. It was rational. The question was whether or not things were working well, whether or not improvements need to be made, whether or not their scientific predictions as to how things would run were correct. So I hope that gives a bit of direction. I think I was a bit all over the place there, but those are just a few of the characteristics of the Holocaust which are fundamentally modernist results of the project of enlightenment. These basic ideas of objectivity, of the supremacy of science, just of this rational, cold way of looking at things.